Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Katie. If this is your first time here, I make videos all about DIY and style, and today we're going to be making some lanterns for your outdoor space. So this is based on some things that I saw in Target. I wanted to recreate them for my style at a much cheaper price than in the store. So this is perfect for your deck, patio, front porch, wherever you are hanging out outside and you want to light it up at night. So hopefully you guys will enjoy these quick and easy tutorials, and let's hop right into it. For this first one, I picked up a bunch of balsa wood strips that you can find at the craft store. They're pretty thin and flexible, and I cut them into 12-inch strips. So each piece of wood that I purchased would be cut up into 3 12-inch strips. So I just made a mark with a pencil every 12 inches and then used my X-Acto knife to cut each piece. Now, like I said, it's pretty thin, so it's easy to cut. You could probably also use scissors if you don't have an X-Acto knife, but that worked well for me. I cut out 26 pieces of wood, and the number that you use will depend on what type of base you're using, but I'm using this terracotta plant pot base. So basically what I did was take my measuring tape and just make a mark every inch because I decided that I wanted my strips of wood to be each 1 inch apart. Once I had made my marks all the way around my base, I put some hot glue onto one of my little pieces of wood and I glued it right to my terracotta base. And I continued doing this with all 26 of my strips, gluing them down 1 inch apart. Try to keep them as straight as possible as you can. I just eyeballed this step and it worked out just fine. The next piece that I'm using I also got in the floral section of the craft store. It's just this wood ring, and what I'm going to do is add a little bit of glue to one of the strips of balsa wood and just glue that ring right to it, and then I'm going to do the same with a piece on the opposite side so that it's nice and stable, and then I can glue around the rest of the way. So like I mentioned before, the balsa is flexible and the wood ring that I'm using is smaller than my base, so I'm just centering it there and then I'm pulling the balsa toward it to create the shape that I want. Now I decided at this point to add a little bit of leather cord to the bottom just to cover up where I had glued down the strips. Now you could leave it as is. You could also use regular rope or some sort of like decorative cord or anything that you like that matches your style. This kind of matches my style, so that's why I decided to do it. And lastly, I added a decorative handle just by threading some wire underneath the wood ring and wrapping it around itself a bunch of times. And then I just cut the excess wire and did the same thing on the other side so that I would have a nice decorative handle to just finish off the look and really complete it. For this next one, I made a bunch of wire rings by wrapping the wire around the bottom of a glass and then just sort of folding the ends around itself. And then I unhooked it, took it off the glass, and then rehooked it and cut it with some wire cutters. You can also find pre-made rings at the craft store, which is another option. And I made about 20 of these, I believe. The next step was to cut up some hemp, or you could use rope, anything that's thin and easy to wrap. And then I'm also using the inner part of an embroidery hoop. So what I'm doing is just putting a dot of glue onto the hoop, and then I am gluing one of my rings to it. Then I'm putting a little more glue down and wrapping my hemp around the ring to cover up that little hook part that I created. And then that is going to keep it nice and stable on my embroidery ring. And do this all the way around your wood ring with your metal rings until it's completely covered. The next step is to add another layer of metal rings. So I'm just, again, adding some glue to keep them together, adding my hemp and gluing it down, wrapping it, and then gluing it again at the end and cutting off any excess. And I'm not going to lie and say that this process wasn't tedious. I did consider giving up at one point because it was a lot of work, but I'm really happy I kept going because as you'll see, the end result is really, really cool. So for the last step, I added another inner part of an embroidery hoop right on top. So I glued one of the rings to it, and then I added my hemp or rope, whatever you're using, and did the same step basically as the first step until all of the rings were connected to the wood. And I'm not going to actually attach it to any base. I'm just going to set it on top of another terracotta dish and place a jar or candle inside. So I did a fun little thing on my Instagram stories where I took a picture of the balsa wood strips and asked if anybody could guess what DIY I was making, and nobody could guess it. But if you won, I was going to give you a shout out in the video and send you a prize. Since nobody guessed it, I'm not doing it this week, but I think I'm going to continue doing this. I think it's really fun. If you're not following me on Instagram, make sure you are so you can participate every week. You might win a prize. If you guys are looking for more DIYs and tutorials, click on the playlist here. I've added some of my absolute favorite summer projects that I've done. It's my favorite time of year, so I think they're some of my best in my opinion. Let me know what you think. I'll see you over there, and happy summer.